Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Heather from Children's Book World, and I am so excited to be here today with a book launch for Laurie Morrison's book, St. Ivy, Kind at All Costs. I was telling Laurie, I read this book last night, and it was like my whole heart was in this book. I loved it so much. I didn't put it down for a second. I didn't even put it down to get a drink of water. It was just so absolutely enjoyable and so real. And I just wished that I had it when I was a kid in middle school, because it would have made me know that somebody out there understood me, which is very special. And we are thrilled that Lisa Graff is joining Laurie in conversation, talk about two amazing middle grade authors and truly wonderful human beings too. So I want to remind people that if you want to ask a question, there'll be a Q&A at the end. So please put questions in the comments. Also, both Laurie and Lisa will be able to sign books this week. So if you want a signed book, a personalized book, which I know during these times is even harder to get, you can go right to our website, and both of their books are available there. And I'm going to disappear for a second and let these lovely women have a conversation that I'm sure we'll remember. Enjoy.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much, Heather, everyone at Children's Book World for hosting this. I know Laurie and I, it's our local children's bookstore, and it's a fantastic store, and they've been so awesome during the pandemic. And anyway, we're really glad to be here, and I'm so glad to celebrate Laurie. So this book, you guys, we're going to talk about it, is so good. I rescued this morning. My daughter decided that the cover needed sequins on it. She was like, seconds from redecorating it for you, Laurie, but I think it looks fantastic without the sequins. So Laurie and I, we go back maybe like, I don't know, 6-7 years maybe. Yeah. Laurie was actually the first friend I met when I moved to Philadelphia. I moved from New York and I had no friends in Philly, and especially no writing friends. And I asked everyone I knew if they knew anyone in Philadelphia. And my editor, Jill, who knows Laurie through their Vermont College of Fine Arts, is how you say it, VCW, through those connections. And she put me in touch with Laurie, and we met up on a friend date in the city. And I think it was the day after you'd gotten engaged, Laurie, is that right? It was really funny. And anyway, we became friends right away. I was engaged, Laurie had just gotten engaged. Then we both got married right around the same time. Then we both started having kids right around the same time. So I feel like our life and our lives and our children's book publishing have sort of been enmeshed in a way. And Laurie's a fantastic writer, as I'm sure most of you who are here know. So we're going to talk about books and things. First, Laurie's going to talk a little bit about St. Ivy and read a little bit.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, everyone, for being here and making this feel really special for me. So I'm going to read the very beginning of St. Ivy, and then Lisa and I will talk. So I'll start with, well, actually, let me tell you a little bit about the book first, in case you don't know yet. So St. Ivy is the story of a 13-year-old girl named Ivy Campbell who prides herself on being kind. She thinks that the only thing that really makes her special is how nice she is. So she wants to be completely on board when her mom decides to try to be a gestational surrogate for family friends. But when Ivy finds out that the surrogacy treatment has worked and her mom is pregnant, she's shocked and ashamed to find that she feels resentful and jealous and sort of worried about how she's going to explain this confusing situation to people. And she wants to prove that she's just as kind and generous as she's always believed. And she gets the chance to do that because she starts receiving these anonymous emails from someone who seems to need her help. But the more Ivy throws herself into trying to figure out who this person is and trying to help them, the farther she gets from the people who love her and the person she really wants to be. So here is just the beginning of chapter 1. The first anonymous email wasn't that big a deal. Not right away, at least. Ivy was on the bus heading home from school when she saw it on her phone. The subject line said, "Thank you," and the sender came up as Down by the Bay 5 at mailme.com. No name. For a second, she thought it was spam, but the preview text started with the words, "Dear Saint Ivy." Saint Ivy. That's what her best friend Kira called her sometimes. And how would a random spammer know that? So she opened the email and read, "Dear Saint Ivy, somebody really smart used to tell me that there should be two different kinds of thank yous. A basic throwaway kind for when somebody holds a door open or says bless you when we sneeze or something, and then a special version that tells a person what you just did for me mattered. It gave me hope when I didn't have any. It turned a really awful day into an almost okay one. Because if we just mumble a quick thanks either way, people don't know when they've really made an impact, and that's a shame. So here goes. My day today was really awful, and you made it almost okay. It probably wasn't a big thing for you what you did, but it was a big thing for me. So I want to let you know that. I want to say the special kind of thank you from your friendly anonymous good deed appreciator." Huh. The bus turned left, rumbling past the used bookstore, the Italian restaurant Ivy's family used to love, and the CVS. Was this a joke? It didn't seem like a joke. If she really improved somebody's day this much, she was happy, but she was confused too. Why did this person want to be anonymous? Who was it? She scanned the email again, searching for clues, but she came up empty. Kira was the one who started calling her Saint Ivy, but now some other kids said it too, and anybody could have heard. And Ivy had done nice things for a lot of people that day. Maybe the email was from Sydney Del Monte, a junior in high school who lived next door to Ivy's dad and had been crying on a bench outside the middle school that morning. Or Lila Britton, who'd borrowed Ivy's math textbook so she wouldn't get in trouble for forgetting hers for the third time in a week. Although Lila wasn't exactly Ivy's #1 fan. Or maybe Josh Miller, the boy Ivy's other best friend Peyton, and pretty much everybody else had a crush on. He'd been hobbling around on crutches after he hurt his knee so badly at soccer, and Ivy had picked up his things when they spilled out of his backpack and then carried his bag to his next class. Actually, the email could have been from Peyton herself. She'd been extra quiet today and extra appreciative when Ivy went with her to the music room and played along on the piano while she practiced her solo for chorus. But Ivy did stuff like that for Peyton all the time, and Peyton had already thanked her plenty. Plus, Peyton had told Kira that Saint Ivy was kind of a strange nickname since Ivy was Jewish on her mom's side, and Jewish people don't even have saints. The bus pulled up to Ivy's stop, so she put her phone away and let the mystery go, mostly. Maybe she'd figure it out later, once she'd loosened up her mind and stopped actively wondering, the way she could sometimes remember a word in Spanish class as soon as she moved on to something else. For now, she and Nana had some pastries to bake. Nana used to live in the suburbs just outside Philadelphia, but she moved into the city last year. Now she lived 5 blocks away from Ivy, down the hill in a 1-bedroom rental on the 21st floor of a big apartment building. Every Friday afternoon, Ivy went to Nana's after school. Today, Nana was waiting in the hallway wearing an impressively bright pink apron that said F-A-B in black cursive letters. "Ta-da!" Nana said, doing a little twirl. "I got us aprons. Do you love them?" Wow, Ivy replied. I know." Nana pointed at the letters one by one. "Friday afternoon baking. F-A-B. Fabulous, right?" "Definitely fabulous," Ivy agreed. Nana kissed her cheek. "I knew you'd love them." She handed Ivy a matching apron in bright purple. It was stiff and scratchy and completely ridiculous, but Nana's whole face lit up when Ivy put it on. "Now don't just stand there," Nana said. "This hallway's sweltering and our time is limited." Ivy wasn't sure if Nana meant our time in a literal sense, as in the 2.5 hours before Ivy went home and Nana went to her neighbor's apartment for Shabbat dinner, or in a more philosophical sense, as in their time on this planet as mortal beings. It could have been either, because Nana said tons of super morbid things. Mom said it was because she had too much time to think now that she'd retired from her job as an elementary school principal. In fact, the whole reason they'd started Friday afternoon baking lessons was because every time Nana baked something delicious, she reminded Mom, Ivy, and Ivy's brother Will that she didn't cook from a book. So after she died, all her recipes would go with her. Mom got sad and flustered every time she said it, And Ivy didn't have anything else to do on Friday afternoons. So the whole thing was a win-win. A win-win-win, actually, because everyone got to eat a whole lot of truly outstanding desserts, too. And I'll stop there.
Yay! I love Nana so much. She's so much fun. And I love all the baking stuff because I also love to bake.
Me too.
Put it in my books. I related to Ivy so hard, just like Heather did. And I think I told you this in a text, Laurie, but the scene where she's baking a cake for someone's birthday and she doesn't have enough time and she wants to do this like overly elaborate thing, even though she's never done it before. And I was like, Laurie has snuck into my life. And then I read this meme the other day that I felt like perfectly encapsulated Ivy. It was like, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm.
Oh,
I feel that. I really feel that.
Yes, that is a good lesson for Ivy.
Yeah, she's done
and for many of us, I think.
Yes. So tell us about how this book came to be. What came first, the plot or the characters? How did it grow?
Okay, well, so this book is kind of a complicated one because I almost always start with characters, and specifically, I almost always start with an emotion that I've experienced myself and want to explore, sort of give to a character and explore in some different way. And that did happen with this book, but the funny thing is, when I announced this book, there were some people who I'd gone to grad school with who were like, "Oh, I remember this book," and I was like, "You do? I didn't write this book in grad school." But the thing is that I was writing a book a long time ago about an 8th grade girl who was having a very complicated reaction to her mom being unexpectedly pregnant, and that was a book called Dear Baby, and it was totally different. The whole thing was written as an extended letter to the baby who hadn't been born yet. And the main character was like super driven and academic achievement oriented and kind of prickly. It was a totally different story, but there is that little bit of the situation, I guess technically is what came first. So I'd written this other story where this girl's relationship with her mom is kind of central to the story, and she's all thrown off that her mom is pregnant with this much younger baby. But then many years later, the current iteration of this really started, as my books often do, with an emotion. I was trying to process. I wanted to explore the sense when you're trying to be a good, kind person, but you have kind of complicated, icky, jealous feelings inside that you feel ashamed of. But the truth is, if you don't deal with those feelings and acknowledge them, they just get bigger and they just kind of cause you to push people away. But that's something that I've dealt with at different points in my own life, of just wanting to be kind and kind of comparing my insides to somebody else's outsides and being like, do other people have thoughts like this? Do other people get jealous of other people or, feel resentful? I took that emotion and I came up with Ivy's character from there. And then the plot took me a while to figure out. There was a while where I knew the character, but I didn't know what would happen in her story. And it was actually, I want to give a shout out to this awesome book, Worth 1,000 Words by Bridget Young, which kind of unlocked, at least the first time around, what I thought the plot would be. It was still really, really hard to write, but it helped me realize, oh, this is a really character-driven mystery. And I was like, I want to write a character-driven mystery. Oh, all right, let's try to make this Ivy book a character-driven mystery. Why not? That sounds easy. Oh, that was not easy. But, that's where it came from.
So what did you learn about writing mysteries? I've tried before and I can't make it work. So give us some advice.
Okay. I don't know. Well, I guess what helped me with this book was I did plot out the mystery part pretty carefully. Like I always knew who was sending the emails. I always knew who I wanted Ivy to think was sending the emails at different points and why. And I always knew when she was going to find out. But I didn't know quite how she was going to find out. And the part that really stumped me was the reader. Like when I got stuck, it was always because I was like, well, this is what's really happening. This is what Ivy's happening. This is what Ivy thinks is happening. And here's what I want the reader to think is happening. And that was just like too many things for my brain. So what I had to ultimately do was let go of that part. Like that was the only way I could finish a draft of the book, was to just be like, I'm going to write through the end of this and then take some distance, read some books that are character-driven mysteries, reread some that I really like, and kind of chronicle my own experience. And I'm also going to have some people read for me who don't know, who didn't read my outline at the beginning when I was pulling together a proposal, who don't know who's emailing, and I'm going to ask them to kind of tell me what they think when. So that's not very clear advice, but what happened to what worked for me was like letting go of one element when it was too much, and sort of saying, I'm going to focus on the story at least for now, and then come back to how I want the mystery to feel for the reader, like by itself later.
Yeah. I love that idea of reading a mystery and like keeping track of what you think at different times, because I feel like sometimes when I read mysteries, I'll like, when I get to the end, I'm like, oh yeah, I always knew it was that person. But then like you at different times, you waffle, even if you did suspect that person.
Yeah.
So that's a great idea.
And with this book, like part of what I kind of wanted was, I really liked the experience if the reader figures it out a little bit before the character does, you know, when you're trying, especially when it's like, it's not a whodunit.
Right.
It's more of a character, you know, an emotional mystery. So I like that experience as a reader of like, I'm not sure. Oh, I think I'm sure. Oh, I know. Oh, come on, figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I find that really satisfying.
Yeah, no, I think it works great. So you tend to write, this book and your previous two books, the characters that you've written as your protagonists are they all 13-year-old girls?
Lauren in Every Shiny Thing is 12.
Okay.
But Kiara, the other protagonist that Cordelia Jensen wrote so beautifully, is 13. And then, Annabelle's 13, Ivy's 13, and then the main character in my next book, B, is also 13.
Nice. I feel like this is your sweet spot. So like, what do you like about this age?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I taught middle school for 10 years. I taught mostly 7th and 8th grade. So, this is an age I feel like I understand pretty well, because I remember this time in my own life pretty clearly. I remember the transition specifically from like, I was at one school all the way from kindergarten through 8th grade and then switched to a new, bigger place for high school. I remember that 8th grade year really well. I remember that shift between 13 and 14 really vividly, and just all that in-betweenness, like all the ways that you're still a kid and not still a kid is really interesting to me. And then I just found as a teacher that I didn't feel like there was enough upper middle grade, is what it's now often called. I felt like most of my students were reading up. Like, well, they were either reading fantasy where they could find kind of more, or they were kind of getting into a reading rut and like having a hard time finding stuff that they connected with that felt like the right age level, or they were reading way up. And there's so much awesome young adult books, but they were sometimes like reading about characters who were 17, and that's really different. And so I felt like there's so much about being 13 that is just tumultuous and confusing, but also exciting and fun. And so I just really am drawn to that age, I think.
Yeah, I think it's such a unique time period, and you do it so well. And it is really hard to find books that capture that one moment where you can be so much like a little teeny kid and then so much an adult. And even the adults in your life expect so many different things from you at the same time.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah. So you wrote this book, you had just left teaching, right? When you started this book, or kind of around the same time?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So you were writing full time?
I guess by the time I really started working on this book, I guess I had not been teaching for almost a year, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were writing full time versus teaching and writing, and then COVID hit at some point in the writing process. So this book, I feel like the writing up was probably very different from writing your previous books.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that affected your writing and the story even?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is also the first book I've ever sold on proposal. So it like my other two books were fully written before they were under contract. And so this one wasn't. And I finished the proposal for this one like just about a week before my younger kid, Sam, was born. So, I mean, I don't know if I was full-time writing. I was lucky if I could get an hour most of the time. But
two main jobs.
Writing was, I mean, being a mom was my main job, and then writing was fit in there. I did like last year for a while. I really finally hit a groove where Cora, my daughter, was in preschool in the mornings, and I was getting to work. I was getting to exercise. It was amazing. I was getting to like have writing dates in coffee shops. Remember that? And I was getting like, you know, consistent time to write. And that, I don't think that this book would exist if I hadn't had that for a few months at least, in like fall of 2019, because the draft took a long time to kind of come together, and then it finally did. And then I had to revise it during the early days of COVID. So that was complicated too. It was kind of a hard process at every turn, this book, actually. So
I remember it's just when you were reading it, I'm like, it just feels so smooth, and it just like plopped into her head. But I remember sitting there with you at some writing dates, and you were like, this book. And it doesn't feel that way at all. Like, it doesn't feel labored, you know, it just is so smooth and easy and fun to read. And I think that's really a testament to your being able to push through that, which is kind of incredible.
Thank you.
Do you think that COVID at all, like the experience of, you know, pandemicness, do you think that changed what you want to write about in the future?
That's such a good question. Yeah, I mean, ironically, like this whole time I have been working really hard and like fitting in time to write, because I had to revise St. Ivy, and then I had to write my next book, which was also under contract. But both of those things, St. Ivy was in developmental edits when COVID hit.
Okay.
Like I had literally just gone back and forth with my editor, Maggie, to figure out my revision plan for like how to tackle this big revision. And that was March 13th. The last time we exchanged emails being like, okay, this is it. This is the plan. This is going to work. Then like everything shut down. But that book, I had written the book, and I had written a proposal. I'd written like 60 pages and an outline for the other book that I've been working on. So in some ways, I'm hitting this wall right now where I'm trying to figure out what I want to work on next, where I'm like, gosh, I don't know. I mean, what headspace do I want to be in? What the heck is it like to be 13 right now? Because I usually feel like I can access that. And I just, you know, there so much has been so incredibly hard. Yeah, so I think I did, in writing this book, I definitely, when I was revising St. Ivy, I did kind of have this crisis of like, why does this book even matter right now? You know, is anybody going to, every 8th grader is going through something more intense than what Ivy's going through right now. When I was revising this book last March and April. And so I had to like kind of confront that and be like, you know what, this still matters, because all I can do is like see deep inside the mind and heart of a kid who's like trying her best and messing up and trying to figure out who she is and how she fits. And if I can go there and depict her feelings and her experiences, you know, honestly and with nuance, that's all I can offer. That's all I can offer. And I just can hope that it'll resonate, but I won't be able to anticipate maybe how. And it's been interesting to hear, you know, the book just came out, but some educators have read it and been like, we need books about kids. Kids need to have self-care right now. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Need to figure out and need to know that like their experiences matter, their feelings matter. So I do think I guess that was kind of a special, that was an experience that I think I'll take with me, that like I get bogged down if I try to think about like, do I reference the pandemic in my, when I write a new book? Like, how do I know what things are going to be like? That's hard, but I just can kind of keep coming back to, you know, starting with my own emotions, as I always do, and just like trying to unflinchingly capture all those human feelings and experiences. And I think that's, I know that everything with COVID has made me like sort of de-emphasize some things in my work and like really delve deeper into other things. But I've always written about self-compassion, really. Like I've always written about characters who are learning to love themselves. And I think we need that.
Yeah,
so I think I'm going to stick with that.
I think that's so important right now, too. I think it's true that a character like Ivy, who gets focused on, you know, well, my life isn't as bad as other people's right now. I mean, that's a thing I find myself doing now. I mean, all the time, but specifically now, it's hard to complain when you hear about people dying, you know, and it's so important to tell kids, like, you matter, and it's okay to just take a moment and step back and talk about your feelings and let other people know. So yeah, I agree. I think this book is surprisingly topical, even though you had no idea it would be a disaster happening in the world. Let's see. Who was your favorite character in this book to write? Which is a question I had, but also Cordelia had. So.
Oh, okay. Well, Nana was really fun. I loved writing Nana. And a lot of the characters were fun, but yeah, I think Nana and a girl named Lila, who's very unlike Ivy and very unlike me, honestly, was also super fun. And like the sort of banter she and Ivy have back and forth, I really enjoyed.
Do you feel like when you were Ivy's age, you were a lot like her? Or were you more like some of the other characters in your other books?
No, I think probably of my books that are published, I'm probably the most like Ivy of all of them. I think the funny thing is like the first books that I wrote that are not published, those characters were probably the most like me, and then I've kind of moved away a little bit. But yeah, and I think I've told you this, Lisa, but like this book clicked for real when I finally switched. It used to be in first person.
Yeah,
I finally just thought what I was getting frustrated with Ivy, and it was because she's a lot like me. And I was getting bogged down in some of her like internal monologue was getting too long. And so I just started the whole thing over like not long before it was due and in third person. And then it really clicked because then I needed that bit of distance to see her with compassion because she was a little too much like me, I think, in a lot of ways.
I find it really interesting too how sometimes reading in third person can connect you more to a character than reading in first person, which is, it really doesn't seem like it would be the case, but
I know, but it is. Yeah.
You need like this much space to really see them.
Yes. I think
yeah. Do you have a favorite scene in the book?
Oh, do I have a favorite scene? I don't know. I guess. I mean, I love a lot of the baking scenes. There are some friendship scenes. There's a fun. Okay, I don't want to give spoilers. There are some friendship scenes. So Ivy has two best friends, Kira and Peyton, and she's kind of growing apart from them. And interestingly, that friendship dynamic is what I've heard from people the most about.
Yeah, that was very relatable and well done too.
Thank you. But just like the way Ivy kind of ends up pushing them away because she doesn't want to let them be there for her. She only wants to be there for them. And those scenes, some of them are kind of painful, but those scenes like poured out and felt true. Those were not hard to write and they felt like pretty charged. So that was an enjoyable experience.
I remember reading this that I felt like, I don't think I've ever read a book that talks about the way that friendships, like I've read so many books where friendships like blast apart, but in this one, they're just growing apart and it's so sad and so painful, but it's not because of like a horrible disagreement or a misunderstanding. It's just, they're not the same. And I loved how you dealt with that. And it's so hard for both of them, but it's also the right thing. Yeah. And then also to have like a third person in there, which sort of like unbalances friendships and they shift. I loved how you did that. Like you can tell that not only you remember what it was like to be a kid, but that you've spent a lot of time around this age group. It feels very, very true. Do you feel like, as someone who, I know you still like read all the time and you taught literature, do you feel like being a teacher of literature, does it really help you in your writing, or does it ever feel like, oh, I know too much?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think like as a teacher, I was not trying to like teach the great novel. And like, I mean, I was trying to teach, I wanted kids to find books that they loved, and I wanted to examine with them what makes the story compelling. And so I think it all kind of plays together. I do think I kind of, sometimes I'm like, okay, I am reading this book because I think it will help me do something I want to do in my own writing. And sometimes I'm like, I am not thinking as a writer right now. Like, I just want to enjoy this story. And I think I've actually read a lot more like adult grown-up books throughout the pandemic because I just wanted space from like thinking about my own work and what was gonna connect with people. And it all felt so confusing, like what even is going on with books and the market and anything. So I wanted to step back from that.
Yeah. Well, I want to leave time for reader questions, or audience questions, not readers. Yeah. They're viewers. And everyone who's watching, if you have any more questions, just put them in the comments. We're going to get to them in 1 second. Laurie and I thought we'd do like a really quick lightning round. I'm going to ask her about 10 questions really, really quick, and then she's going to ask me questions, and that'll give you guys some time to write questions in the comments if you have any. And mine, Laurie, I was doing them during my son's online kindergarten in our basement, and they're weird.
Okay, fair enough. I'll do my best.
Just go with it. Okay. Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate.
I knew you were going to say that. Who is it? I don't know. Swimming or skiing?
Swimming.
Okay. Skorts, yay or nay?
Nay for me, yay for my kid.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, true. Pigs, guinea or potbelly?
Potbelly.
They're so cute. Snails or slugs?
Snails.
All right. Who would pick slugs? I don't know. Sunlight or moonlight?
Ooh, sunlight.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
I thought you would say cake. Hans Christian Andersen or Brothers Grimm?
Oh, Hans Christian Andersen.
Nice. Serif or sans serif?
Oh, sans serif.
All right, last one. Pencil or pen?
Pen.
Nice.
Okay, yours are more fun than mine. So I have some that are about writing and some that are kind of about St. Ivy. Okay. Oh. Are you a plotter or a pantser who writes by the seat of your pants?
Oh, pantser for sure. Yeah, you knew that.
Do you prefer drafting or revising?
Revising.
Hardcover or paperback? What do you prefer to read?
Paperback.
Computer or pen and paper?
Depends on the moment, but overall, pen and paper.
Okay. Microsoft Word or Scrivener?
Microsoft Word.
Beginnings or endings?
Endings.
Okay, and now these are kind of St. Ivy inspired, so people who've read it will kind of get it. Philly cheesesteaks or New York City bagels?
Oh, Philly cheesesteaks.
Rugula or German chocolate cake?
German chocolate cake.
I kind of know the answer to this from the conversation so far, but are you an Ivy, a Lila, a Kira, or a Peyton?
I am so an Ivy.
And is it harder to be kind to others or to yourself?
Oh, I think it's so much harder to be kind to yourself. I really, really do. All right, I'm going to scroll through these questions. It looks like we got some good ones. Everybody, keep them coming. I think we have some time. So let's see. Lynn wants to know, did you find selling a book on proposal scary in comparison to writing the whole thing first, or did you find it reassuring? How does the process differ between the two?
Oh, that's a great question. So just in case anybody doesn't know, like selling it on proposal means, I guess I had written about 50 pages and an outline. I've now done that twice. It went way better the second time than it did with this book. I kind of regretted that I think it was good that I knew what I had to focus on. And I'm really proud of this book.
You pulled it up
100% guarantee that I would not have written it. I would not have finished it had it not been under contract.
Yeah.
So I at first found it reassuring that I was like, yay, I'm going to have another book out. This is awesome. And then I found it terrifying. And in fact, the reason I had another proposal to like pass on quickly was because I wrote that proposal in between when I turned in a draft and got edits in case Maggie, my editor, was like, we can't publish.
I did not know that, Laurie. That's
So it was, I don't know. I mean, it was reassuring, then scary. But in the end, I'm really glad that I did it because I'm glad that I pushed through the book. I think in the future, I felt a lot more confident that I understood the plot of the next book that I sold on proposal, and that it like played to my strengths.
Yeah.
Kind of, I mean, not that the book didn't need work, because like I'm definitely in edits for it now. But that time I really did find it reassuring and like motivating. And but I think it's a tricky thing to do with a book that is pushing you way outside your comfort zone.
But I'm so glad that it did. Like, I'm so glad that you felt like you had to finish this book, because I just can't imagine not having this book. Like, she's such a special character and someone, again, that I hadn't really seen before. I'm just so glad. I'm so glad that she's here, that you wrote her, and that you felt like you had to.
Well, I have to say that you really inspired me, Lisa, because when Lisa and I met, like Lisa was this, she'd published like, I don't know, dozens of books already. But she treated me like an equal, like even though I hadn't sold a book yet. And I got to see how she challenged herself with each project and like tried something completely new and really pushed herself, and had this confidence deep down. I think that even like you both would acknowledge how hard things were, but also be like, I have a vision for this. It's going to take a while, but I think I'm going to get there. And I often channeled you, Lisa. Well, I was like, Lisa would say, deep down, you can do this. So just like trust that and push yourself like Lisa would. So
I appreciate that so much, Laurie. That means so much, especially the book I'm writing now, as you know, has been like a monster beast times a million because of COVID, but it was even before that. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, I keep thinking like, why am I writing things I've never tried to write before? That's stupid. I know I'm good at this other thing. But yeah, you do that too. You branched out. And I'm so glad, because here's this book that we didn't have before,
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Linda wants to know, how has your process evolved over time?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one thing that has evolved is that I trust myself to stop if it doesn't feel right. Like, and I mean, I think in the past 2 different times, I felt like I was losing track of a book and pushed forward anyway and got so off track. And I don't do that anymore. And I think that works for some people to just kind of push through a messy draft, but I trust my gut now. And so if I feel like I'm going way off track, I stop and like do a lot of free writing and often go back to the beginning and like try to get reacquainted with what I want the story to be. And then I am not a pantser. I think I do a lot of generative work before I ever try to figure out a plot, but then like I do need to know where the story is going. I do need landmarks. And if I start to feel that they're wrong, I have to stop, go back to square one and like figure out what the right landmarks are or what I think are the right ones, and then keep going. So I think that has changed about my process. I think I'm more of a plotter and more in tune with my sense of whether something's working or not.
Do you feel like you're someone as a reader who, when you start a book, you will stop reading if you don't like it? Because I'm definitely that. And I know some people find that like sacrilegious.
Yeah. I'm better about that now, I think, because I just feel like there are so many books I want to read. So if I'm not, I do give a book 50 pages. Mm-hmm. But then if I'm really not connecting with it, I'm like, all right, it's not you, it's me, but
I know. I would like
sometimes it'll just be like not the right time for me to read a certain book, and I'll go back.
Yeah. I used to feel guilty as a kid. I'd be like, I have to read this book. People said it was good. And it was my mom, who's a librarian, who was like, stop reading. You hate it. Stop reading. Don't punish yourself. And I think that's important for kids too, to be like, if you're not reading it for school, like stop reading the dumb book, because you need to find the books you love.
Definitely.
So it's interesting you sort of do that a little bit with writing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought about it the same way. Like you have to love the book you're writing.
You have to.
Although once you get like deep enough in, then you just have to finish the darn thing.
Right. But sometimes you have to reacquaint yourself with why you loved it.
Yes.
Even during that slog, I think.
Okay, so Nancy, she's curious about the emails and if they're set apart by different fonts. And then she says, what's your favorite thing about how the book was designed? Which I think is an interesting.
Oh, I love that. Okay, the emails are in a different font and pretty late in the game, like I think in copy edits. I mean, they're, so you can sort of see, I don't know how well you can see, but they are in a different font. Pretty late in the game, we were like, oh, wait a minute. I wasn't very consistent with these emails, and I don't usually have, sometimes I have like the to and from and subject, and sometimes I don't if they're really short. So pretty late in the game, I was like, we got to add that. And I had to just like all of a sudden make up a bunch of subject lines for emails that I had never given a subject to. And what do I love most about the book's design? So, I mean, I really love the cover, but the sort of sneaky thing inside, I just love.
I love that. That's so sweet.
I think is so fun. And I love the back, just the way they designed the back. I think
all those awesome quotes you got.
Yeah.
There's some good quotes.
Yeah. People were so kind to take the time to read a book to blurb, at such a difficult time. So I'm really, really grateful.
Let's see. Emily wants to know if being a writer is something you've wanted to do since you were young. Oh, great question. No, it's not. I wanted to be a teacher since I was young, which I was for 10 years. And I think and hope I will be again. But I knew I loved to read and I studied literature and everything, but I did not attempt to write fiction or think I had any stories of my own to tell until after my first year of teaching middle school. So that was always linked for me. Like I didn't really start any kind of creative writing until I became a teacher and got reacquainted with middle grade and young adult literature with my. Do you remember a moment or a book that made you feel like, oh, this is something I have to do?
I guess I remember a lot of books really clearly from when I was a kid, and some of them I think I reread around them. And that was inspiring. And then I just remember having a book club, and I didn't pick the book because I hadn't been there before the year, but like I read, it was a Sarah Dessen book. I think it was This Lullaby. And I thought it was so fun. It was the first book of hers that I read, and the kids in the group just loved it. And we had the best conversation about it together. And it just led us to be able to, when you talk about a book that kids connect with, it's just magic because they can share so openly about all sorts of things as they relate to the story. And so I think that kind of got me hooked.
I love having discussions with kids about books when they're like, either when they love them or when they hate them. Like, I feel like kids a lot of times will take books personally in this kind of great way where like, why would the character do that? Like, it's so mad. And it's like, even when they love the book, they're like, that was such a terrible thing. And they just like fall in love with the characters. And it's so wonderful to be able to see them love it. I find it really inspiring too. That's one of the things I think I miss so much right now about being virtual is like, even though I can do school visits with kids, I'm not having lunches with 5 kids.
Yeah, I know that is pretty amazing.
Ask them silly questions and see what their pudding cups look like. And, it's just those little details you kind of miss.
For sure.
Let's see. Melissa wants to know, what were some of your favorite books as a young reader, and how did those books inspire what you write now?
Oh, okay, that's a great one. Well, I posted about this recently on Instagram, which is why it's right there. But Just as Long as We're Together by Judy Blume was my absolute favorite.
I have never read it.
I love it so much. I read it so many times. And the companion, Here's to You, Rachel Robinson, I also loved. And I was actually a lot more like Rachel than Stephanie, the main character in this. But for some reason, this book just comforted me so much. It just felt so real. And I think I posted about this on Instagram, but I didn't set out to write something that had anything in common with this book. But as I was writing the dynamics with Ivy's two closest friends, Kira and Peyton, I kept thinking back to this book. It's about, it's these three characters, and two of them have been best friends for a really long time, as Ivy and Kira have, and are kind of growing apart, and one of them doesn't really want to open up about something difficult to the other. And so I thought a lot about this book, and a lot of Catherine Patterson books too. I really, really loved, and just her books. The characters are so real, and I love them so much, and they mess up big, and I love them and rooted for them anyway. And that just was huge for me as like a kid who was really hard on myself, and being like, I love these characters, even though they mess up, I can love myself, even though I mess up. And that is always sort of at the core of what I write, is just like wanting to give that experience to kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think our very last question comes from Michael Fabius, who you may know. He says, scuba or ski?
Oh, scuba.
I think you were set up with that one. Well, that is all the questions. Let's see if we have any more. No, we have no more questions. I will turn it over to Heather.
So I just want to thank you both. I'm sitting looking at all the comments and realizing we are so lucky to have this store situated in like the best community of authors and illustrators. And you are just all so supportive of each other and so wonderful. I'm looking at Laura and Cordelia and everybody chiming in, and it's just such nice place to be. I do want to remind everybody that you can get Laurie and Lisa's books, personalized autographs. Just go to childrensbookworld.net. It's there. And then the last thing I want to say was, I have this like quote wall where I put some of my favorite quotes, and COVID's been kind of hard, and I haven't been reading quite as much as I used to, and my quote wall's been suffering a bit. But there was a quote. It's from Nana, of course, in this book, where she says, drama. Nana didn't like that word. Nana had said it minimizes legitimate feelings and conflicts, and people only use it when they're talking about girls. And I have to say that one of the things that both of you do is you reach kids and you make them feel heard and important and understood, and you never delegitimize any of their feelings. And I know Nana would be very proud of you. And as a bookseller, I can't tell you how much we all appreciate having those stories that make kids feel like they're understood and important and not alone. So I just want to thank you both, and happy book birthday, and
thank you for for making this happen, Heather. And Children's Book World is just the most wonderful store, and it just felt like, a distance hug just walking in last week. Is just such a special place to be. Thank you for all that you do for authors.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy your afternoons.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks. Bye, guys.